Welcome back to Optimize Health, where we're making easy, healthy, and delicious meals. Today, we're going to visit more in depth on fixing our periods, and specifically with the issue of endometriosis and some actionable items that you can do at home and naturally. And within a couple of cycles, should start to see improvements and, if not, complete resolution over time as you're consistent with lifestyle changes. So, just going into some of the background, endometriosis is associated with tissue that's coming from the endometrium that's in places in the pelvis where it's not supposed to be. And it's going to cause things like bleeding and pain. And that can happen just randomly. It can happen during intercourse, during using the restroom, or if you're trying to be active in some ways, or just trying to sit down or sleep. So it can be really disruptive. And it's important to figure out some natural ways that we can address, like our diet and a little bit of lifestyle changes to help to mitigate and hopefully correct that. So I did a lot of research on this topic, and what I found out was really interesting, that one of the newer theories now that a lot of information is out there and they're trying to kind of figure out and whittle it down to the cause. We're seeing a lot of association with a bacteria that is often seen in the mouth and the whole gastrointestinal tract, which extends from the mouth down to the rectum. The bacteria in this part, this organ system, can get into the pelvic and vaginal system of females quite easily. They're so closely associated. So the bacteria that's of concern is called Fusobacterium species, and then there are subtypes of that type of bacteria. One that was studied pretty intensively is called Fusobacterium nucleatum. And what I found that's really important to know is it's not just associated with higher incidence of endometriosis, but also colon cancer, other cancers in the pelvis, and other potential inflammatory conditions. So like things like PCOS. So this could be a systemic issue that if you're experiencing endometriosis or similar symptoms, you may have abnormal numbers and abnormal populations of this Fusobacterium nucleatum, and you want to try to get rid of it so that you can decrease your risk, not only your symptoms of endometriosis, but some of these long-term consequences or things that could affect other body systems and potentially lead to cancer down the road. So that's important to touch on, but it's also good to know that the good news is that bacteria have a short life cycle, and we can naturally select for the bacteria that live in our gut and therefore living in our vaginal and pelvic systems based on the environment that we create for them. So this is going to be where our lifestyle and diet changes are going to help to make a big difference. You should talk to your doctor, healthcare provider, or veterinarian to see if any of these recipes, suggestions, or contents of these videos are right for you. Nothing contained in these videos are intended to be taken as medical advice. Use at your own risk. So traditional treatment for endometriosis, if you're not aware, typically people are going to be offered like the hormone therapies, which they're hormone mimicking medications. It's not like our natural hormones in our cycle. So this actually causes a lot of disruption, not only in our hormonal cycles and systems, but it affects our gut microbiome in a negative way. Down the road, there's a lot of other negative effects that can happen from taking those kinds of medications over time. And then the other common option is surgery. It just doesn't make sense, because like if someone's going in for surgery for the endometriosis and then they have a few more cycles, a few months down the road, they're getting more endometriosis coming right back out there into their pelvic system. And are you going to go do surgery every couple of months to cut that out? Like it doesn't make sense to not address the issue at the core and prevent it, rather than trying to chase after it with these other therapies that aren't really curative. So the things we would recommend are anti-inflammatory protocol. The bad bacteria, this fusobacterium, causes inflammation, and it causes reactive changes with that endometrial tissue that's out in the pelvis where it shouldn't be, and it causes our uterus to react differently, and instead of having contractions that as it's expelling the endometrial lining, instead of pushing the right direction out of the cervix and then out of the vagina, it's kind of dysregulated and it's pushing it up, and that's where the fallopian tubes are, and so that's how the endometriosis tissues get out into the pelvis and attach to the abdominal wall or the ovaries or fallopian tubes or anywhere in there, and cause all of those issues. So the anti-inflammatory protocols that we recommend in general are going to be really helpful. I'm going to try to just go into this again more specifically for this condition, but in general, if you understand these concepts, it will carry you quite a long way with a lot of different conditions, not just endometriosis. So we're looking at foods and supplements. A really cool study I saw was in Japan. They were looking at women who had endometriosis and those who didn't. A lot of the women who didn't have it and they didn't have the fusobacterium was because they associated this with an increase in fiber consumption, but also interestingly in dairy that was fermented. And in Japan, I had to go and see, like, okay, what kind of dairy are they consuming? Because it's not a typical, it's more of a Western food and kind of more of a newer integration into the Japanese diet. A lot of the Japanese dairy is coming from Australia, and there was another place, I think, in Europe. So a little bit different from US dairy. They may have, I think it was Australia, New Zealand, and then, yeah, some other European countries. So I think the importance of that is just the quality, likely, of the dairy. So if you're eating cheese, you know, that's what they saw a lot in this study. People eating cheese and fermented things like yogurt from a higher quality source was helpful. But things that like Velveeta that we get over here in the US is probably not going to count. It's probably going to do the opposite. So I just thought it was important to touch on that. Fiber is also really important and showed up in this Japanese study. Other studies have shown that the microbiome is best balanced with a variety of low glycemic index plant foods. You want to get different colors of different vegetables and fruits, and just keeping your sugar modified to make sure you're not increasing inflammation from having higher insulin levels. And we go more into depth on that in some of our fasting videos. If you'd like to reference that, or just send me a comment or a question, I'll be happy to try to clarify anything. Obviously, we know about prebiotics and probiotics, and a lot of times these are helpful. You do have to have the diet to support them ongoing, or they kind of get in there and then they don't have anything to live with and to thrive on, and then they die. So it's good to get started on a program, but also to eat the fiber foods to be able to maintain the good bacteria. And for the last part of the anti-inflammatory protocol would be supplements, ensuring that you don't have nutrient or micronutrient deficiencies, minerals, B vitamins, things like magnesium are really important. So my really short list is going to include your multivitamin, magnesium, vitamin D3 and K2, fish oil or omega-3s that are going to include DHA and EPA, as well as turmeric and garlic can be considered. And you can just get those as a food or seasoning component of your diet. And then some other things to add in that definitely can help with endometriosis or PCOS are fasting and stress management for your insulin and your inflammation, and then also for your microbiome health to decrease the fusobacterium. Clean eating and reducing your environmental exposures to toxins, things like not microwaving your food in plastics, not drinking out of plastic bottles, and watching the chemicals you put on your skin. Lastly, I would mention things to boost your progesterone. It's really important because the endometriosis is associated with higher estrogen that's not balanced properly with progesterone. The higher estrogen, again, is those xenochemicals, those environmental toxins. A lot of them are estrogen mimickers. But also, when our body gets too stressed, it's not able to produce enough progesterone, and those two, estrogen and progesterone, have to work in appropriate balance, or you're going to get off balance issues like overgrowth of tissues in endometriosis. So progesterone boosting foods, please see the video I did on fasting for women that are cycling in their menstrual cycles. And there's times when you need to eat nature's carbs like sweet potatoes and some fruits and things during your cycle. And then there are times when it's, beneficial to fast more. So we have to, refer you back to that video. It's because it's just too in depth to get into right now, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions you have. And I hope you guys will send in some requests, some comments and things that you want me to cover next. Hopefully this will be really helpful for everybody, and we appreciate you tuning in. So please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.